also there's video, of course. Video.
No, we shouldn't.
They didn't say video, but they said that, because they interviewed 68 people or something like this for this investigation. And,
all right, everybody. Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear us. Okay, good. All right, welcome. Sorry, it took me a second to get everything up and running. Welcome to the 2020 Baseball Alternate State Clinic. Tonight we actually have two clinicians. We've got Jay Cousins and Tom Litchfield will be going through the presentation. I am going to start this off by muting everybody's microphone. So that way, if you've got dogs barking or babies crying or the TV on loud or you're having a party or whatever, we don't hear all the background noise. So I will mute you. If you have a question, there is a chat box that if you go to the bottom of your screen, it should be, you can type in a question. I'll be monitoring that throughout the duration and we'll wave to Tom and Jay and then read it to them and they can respond. So you'll start off muted and just type in those chats as you go. I will actually be moving away from this computer so that Jay and Tom can sit here and we will get started. So welcome again and enjoy the presentation.
All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing tonight?
Good,
Oh, actually, I can't hear any of you. So, yeah, you're muted, so that's okay.
Great.
I do see mouths moving, so that's a good thing. Okay, so, am I using the mouse to?
You can use right arrow against the sides.
Right arrow.
Yeah.
Okay, stand by, gentlemen, for 1 second here while I figure out how to advance these slides. Is it?
Turn the mouse over real quick. And then just click anywhere on here. And then, there you go.
Oh, okay.
So whatever you just did, do that again.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so we're just going to go through these. Oh, I don't know.
That's not all. To get to it.
Okay, we're just going to slip through some of these slides and just get to the nuts and bolts of the baseball version. So just bear with me just for a second. Oh, and there we go. All right. So, hey guys, and girls, there's one major change, and it's the DH rule. It's a PDH situation. So just keep in mind it's new for 2020, and it's a little bit complicated, but we're going to try to simplify that for you tonight as much as we possibly can. Tom has researched the hell out of this thing, so he'll be pretty much doing the DH, the PDH, the new rule. But keep in mind, also, Referee Magazine put out a cheat sheet for us. So it's got a front and a back, and so our group here at the Central Region is going to be laminating these, and we're going to require all of our umpires to go ahead and carry these things on them at all times, because there's going to be a skipper, a manager somewhere out there who is going to try to exploit this. You know this for a fact. So all we're going to ask is that you study this thing, be prepared to explain it to a coach, especially because they're going to be confused too. I know a lot of them are confused about this thing. A lot of umpires are confused about it. But like I said, we're going to try to simplify it tonight and see if we can, make it easy for everybody. So, like I said, there's really the intent of the rule when they met in June to change this thing or to add it is it contributes to the offense. So that's what they're trying to do in baseball at all levels. They're trying to get the ball hit more often. So that's number one. Number two is it allows the starting DH to also be a starting defensive player. So keep that in mind. So once again, it allows the starting DH to also be a starting defensive player. And number three, and with pitch count restrictions on pitchers these days, and with pitchers being able to hit as well as they have in the past, it's going to allow pitchers to remain in the game as a hitter while removing them from the pitching position. So keep those three things in mind. That was the intent of the new PDH rules. And we'll see. I think it was. And then, of course, the new 2020 rule book, has it all highlighted in gray. So once you get your 2020 rule books, you can certainly, look at that and study it. Okay, I'm going to turn this over to you, Tom.
Okay. Okay, so the way we're going to, I'm going to go right through the slides, and as we go through this, we'll probably spend a lot more time on some of the later slides. The previous DH rule still exists. As written before, the DH has to be named in the starting lineup. He can DH for any of the defensive players. The defensive player and the DH are tied to one spot in the batting order. And any substitution on defense or on offense does not affect the DH, except that when the DH plays defense, then there's no more DH. You're down to a straight 9 or things like that. So the previous DH rule, there is no change. And so the DH is terminated when, for the remainder of the game, when the defensive player who the DH is batting bats or pinch runs, so basically comes in on offense. Okay. They're in the same order. Yeah. Okay. And then the starting designated hitter now may be any starting defensive player. So think of it as the designated hitter is batting for, he's DHing for himself essentially as a defensive player. The defensive player can be substituted for, so he can be removed from the game as the defensive player. For instance, he's the pitcher. He comes out of the game as the pitcher, a new pitcher comes in, he retains his position in the batting order and continues to bat now just as a DH. He still has re-entry eligibility to go back in on defense. He would replace only the person in the same defensive spot that he left. So he can only re-enter one time. When using the pitcher DH, the role of the DH is terminated for the remainder of the game if anybody substitutes offensively for that DH. And that is a significant change. So he starts as the pitcher, he comes out as the pitcher, he remains in the game as the DH, he gets on base, and then they pinch run for him. Now he's been offensively substituted. That terminates the DH for the remainder of the game, and now you have a straight 9 situation. So in that example that I just gave you, the pitch player DH was the pitcher. He comes out of the game as the pitcher. He remains in the game as a designated hitter. He gets on base, and now a pinch runner comes in. That pinch runner is a substitute now for both that pitcher and the DH. We're down to a straight 9. The DH could re-enter the game if he has not come back in on defense before. But once he re-enters, it's as a straight 9. He can no longer be just the DH. Under the previous DH rule, just as a reminder, the DH is terminated for the duration of the game when a starting defensive player is substituted for, reading my slide here.
As either a hitter or a runner.
Yeah, so anytime that player DH is substituted for on offense, the DH is terminated for the remainder of the game. The actual, in the rule book, they have struck through the one where it says a starting defensive player cannot be the designated hitter. Now they can be. And that player / DH, for those that do college baseball, it is not the same. and it is nowhere close to the same. So don't try to apply that rule. Read up on this one. It's one of the tougher rules that we're going to have, as far as we're going to have to explain it to coaches because they're not going to understand it clearly. I've already explained it to one coach and a couple other umpires before this meeting. So as you think about this and you have a question, please type that question up. Dana will retrieve questions and we will address those throughout the course of this presentation. The next thing, we'll go on to the next slide here. If no DH is designated at the beginning of the game, it's a straight 9. Okay. Under the traditional DH rule, if a pinch hitter or a pinch runner is substitutes for the designated hitter, that player becomes the designated hitter. It's not so under that player designated, the player DH rule that we have now. One more thing, if under this player DH, if, first of all, the batting order cannot change, but let's talk about the courtesy runner. If a pitcher starts the game as the pitcher / DH, they cannot use a courtesy runner for that person without it being a substitution. So even if they're the pitcher or the catcher, if they're listed as the player, say the pitcher and the DH, the person gets on base, they cannot use a courtesy runner for him without that being a substitution. Changes that, as the rule book, this is some of the changes that you're going to see in the rule book. I don't think the struck through parts for the purposes of the slides are shown what has been changed. In the rule book itself, I've taken a quick look at it. The struck through part is not there anymore. It's just that what has been added is now in gray, so we can see where the rule was actually changed. One more thing about that, we're going to have we have our test here coming up in March, and my experience in 20 years of umpiring high school baseball is that all new rules, there's like 4 test questions about the new rules. So you can expect to see the many questions on this in the test. Okay. And the last one here, the defensive player this is the designated hitter is terminated for the game if the defensive player or any previous defensive player that the designated hitter batted for subsequently bats, pinch hits, or pinch runs, then the role of the designated hitter is terminated. And if the designated hitter plays a defensive position. Now, that's the previous DH rule. We've seen that before. If we have a good understanding of that, this new rule is to allow a little bit more offense, and Jay talked about the rationale for it. There it is in words on the page. I think the intent is basically for as if it was a pitcher, but it could be a left fielder or a third baseman or something replaced late in the game as a defense, a defensive replacement late in the game, but the person's bat gets to stay in the lineup. Batting order cannot change with substitutions, and that is the new designated hitter rule. I know that many of you will have questions about this. Please fire away. Dana will field them and we will address them. Jay's going to talk about points of emphasis here in the next few minutes.
But before I do, guys, I want to remind you also, be sure you're very familiar with your illegal sub provision. I mean, we're going to be pretty flexible about this for the season, but because I mean, some of these managers are going to be confused about this, and especially at the lower levels. So you're not only going to have to explain this, but also you're going to have to know if it continues on during the game and they keep doing it, know your illegal sub provision. That's under 2-36-3. So just read up on that and know exactly what what to do in case we have an illegal sub on that. So just and like I said, just keep in mind. I mean, they can do three things now. They can submit a straight 9, they can submit a traditional DH, or they can submit this new thing called player DH or PDH, and that's new for this coming season. So those are the three things they can do. And hey, if they both want to submit a straight 9, congratulate them profusely while they do that, because I mean that's going to make life a whole lot easier for everyone. But I mean, they're not always going to do that. They're going to, because it's new, they're going to give it a shot. They're probably looking it over as we speak and trying to make sense of it. So you just have to be able to explain it as best you possibly can.
Yeah, I expect questions from coaches, saying, okay, I know I started with this, but can I do this or can I do that? The document that I got from Referee Magazine has a number of case plays. I don't believe there are any case plays actually in our case book for this year, but there are a number of them through Referee Magazine that identifies situations that are likely. Probably doesn't cover every situation that could possibly happen. Some creative coach is going to come out there with something that you had not considered before. And don't be afraid to take a moment. If you carry one of these cards in your pocket during the game, get together with your partner, talk about it to make sure you get it as nearly correct as we can.
And some of the other keys on this new PDH is, always confirm at the plate meeting, whether the DH is being used and the type of DH now. Now there's, there's two of them now. There's two options out there. So just be absolutely sure when you get that lineup that you check that out carefully and figure out which kind of DH they're using. Is it the traditional DH or is it the PDH? So just stare at that lineup card right at the beginning, right off the rip, and just be familiar with that. Because a lot of managers fill out lineup cards differently. With the traditional DH, make sure it's clear for whom the DH is hitting. Okay, so and that's usually they'll draw that line from the DH and to the player who's actually being DH for. So that kind of thing, you'll see a traditional DH lineup that way. But the PDH is going to be vastly different. So be sure that you check out that lineup card at the beginning and make sure it's which type of DH you're doing.
One Jay reminded me as he was talking there, one thing, a straight 9 will have 9 names on a lineup card, of course. A lineup with the player DH will also have only 9 names on the lineup card. A traditional DH will have 10 names on the lineup card. So that's one thing that I do is make sure that I count and have the right number of people there. To make sure, and also if there's the same name listed twice, make sure it's actually different people.
And know specifically who has re-entry rights on this thing too. Just be sure you know all about that. That'll have a huge impact on allowable substitutes, during the game. So there's a lot to think about here. But I mean, if you just keep these key concepts in mind, I think we're going to be doing okay. But like I said, study it. Be familiar with it. Just be able to explain some basic concepts on this PDH, okay? Because like I said, it's brand new. It's a little bit confusing, and we're the ones they're going to count on to provide answers. So just be sure you have that completely locked in.
All right, I'm going to. We've got the points of emphasis coming up. Yep. Jay's going to cover that. I'll check with Dana for questions that may be coming in. Feel free.
There are no questions, but I do have a question for all of you attending. There is somebody who's logged in only by the name of John, and we have a number of Johns who are registered. If you can either type in what your last name is so that I can give you credit. If I don't have your last name, I can't give you credit. So either shoot me an email, shoot me a text, or just message me on here. So I know who I'm giving credit to, because I don't want to give credit to everybody in the state named John if they're not on here.
And guys, like I said, if you have some questions, feel free to type them in, and we'll do our best to answer them. So, like I said, this is brand new, and we do need to be familiar with it. And I have a couple of, and also if you have any interest in, I came up with a bunch of questions and answers of my own, and I tried to answer them myself. So if you have any interest in, getting into that, at the end of the presentation, just let me know, let Tom and I know, and we will, I can read some of those questions that I developed for myself and answer. So if you have any interest in that, let us know, and we'll get to that. But let's move on to the points of emphasis, and obviously the first one's going to be the DH, the designated hitter. Obviously, they're going to do this again, so it's not only in the rule changes, but it's also in points of emphasis. So they really want us to be able to deal with this and explain it, and realize what the intent is of this new rule. So keep in mind also that, and they talk about Tom talked about the courtesy runner earlier, but the courtesy runner can never have any function with a DH. So when the DH comes to bat, he's a DH regardless of either lineup option. So when at bat, you never assume a defensive position. As a result, a courtesy runner is never a legal sub for a DH. So let's also try to keep that in mind too. And more DH stuff. I didn't realize. Okay, so let's see. Am I on the right side? Yes, I am. Okay, so if the DH is batting for another player, when he bats, he is a DH. As a result, if a runner comes in for him when he gets on base, it's a sub, and that player is now the DH. So if the DH is a player DH, he's batting as the DH, and a substitution by an offensive player would eliminate the role of the DH. So I know this is a lot of, maybe tough for some of you guys to wrap this around your heads. I know it was tough for me. I mean, Tom and I both had to kind of study this thing and try to make sense of it ourselves. So, but the key is to be, to go in your, when you get to your local groups, make sure you're talking about that quite a bit, and be thinking about, downloading that cheat sheet. It's really great. It's excellent. Tom and I used to carry a cheat sheet when we were working for D1. We carried it all the time because the PDH in collegiate ball is a whole lot different. So we always carried a cheat sheet with us just in case, we had to refer to it. And same thing here. So you guys really want to make sure that you get this thing laminated. There's a lot of great info on that, and it asks basically questions that a manager would ask. And it's all about, carrying this thing on you at all times and being able to explain this. All right, so, and like I said, you guys have any questions, type them in, because that's why we're here. All right, so there's a point of emphasis on game-ending procedures, okay? So keep in mind, a state association can adopt game-ending procedures, and it's all over the rule book, by the way, to determine how games, including suspended games, or how they're ended. However, if a state doesn't adopt game-ending procedures by mutual agreement of the opposing coaches and the umpire-in-chief, any remaining play may be shortened or the game terminated. But keep in mind, the NMOA has game-ending procedures, and they're very specific. So so read that. That's why it's a point of emphasis. There's all kinds of questions about this in New Mexico last year. Guys were running. It was a 20-2, and the coach says, "Hey, can we end this after 3 or after 3 innings?" And so they were doing that, and it wasn't quite legal, and so some umpires got themselves in a little bit of trouble with that. So just be familiar with the game-ending procedures are here at the NMOA here in the state of New Mexico, and you'll be good to go. And that's under 4-2-4. Okay, so here's the forced play slide rule again showing up in the points of emphasis. Okay, this is like the 4th year in a row this forced play slide rule has shown up in points of emphasis. So the reason that happens is because there was some abuse somewhere in the United States or in many places in the United States about the forced play slide rule. So let's just go over this real quick. It's in 8-4-2B. And you first probably need to be real familiar with the legal definition of a slide in the rule book, which is under 2-32-1 and 2. So it says runners are never required to slide. That's the key. That's where they're abusing it. Okay.
So some umpires just think force play slide rule. You must slide. Force play slide rule. Well, you don't have to slide. Keep that in mind. Okay. Runners are never required to slide. It's the first sentence in this rule, so be familiar with that. But if a runner elects to slide any base, it must be legal. That's where you want to read your definition of a legal slide.
So there was one question. What are game ending procedures?
Sure. So, Tom, if you could just go to the page in the game ending procedures and jump on that if you would. Hey, I'll have that answer for you in just a second on the game ending procedures. So, game ending procedures are, 10-run rule, for instance. Some states don't have 10-run rule. They have 15-run rules, or they have 15 after 3, or 50, there's a variety of stuff going on out there. But in the state of New Mexico, we have very specific game ending procedures. But what that rule was saying is if you don't have them, you can be flexible to a certain point by coming up with a mutual agreement with the managers. You can come up with game-ending procedures. But in the state of New Mexico, I do believe we're very specific about that. So, and then the game-ending procedures. Let's see, 424 on that, Tom. Okay. Okay, so back to the force play slide rule. We'll get to the question in just a second, but a legal slide can be either feet first or head first. If a runner slides feet first, at least one leg and butt cheek has to be on the ground. Okay, so that's the definition of a legal slide in the force play slide situation. Okay, so this has been around for many years. Runners cannot pop up into the fielder. Remember, that's going to be an interference situation, okay, because it's interfering with the pattern of the play. So you want to get on that and rule him, out. And I mean, if it's malicious, you're going to eject him, but it's usually not. I mean, we've all seen some malicious stuff out there. We deal with that a little bit differently. But like I said, the pop-up slide is not going to work ever, and you want to jump on that and then explain to the coach that hey, a pop-up cannot be used in a force play slide situation. Okay. All right. So they go on to say runners may not have a leg raised higher than the fielder's knee. Okay, that's been around for a long time too. I would guess it's been around for about 10 years, maybe even longer, 15 years maybe. The reason for that is because baseball players are wearing metal cleats, and if those cleats are at the knee, higher than the knee or higher, then it could could tear up some skin. So it's dangerous, it's malicious, and you're gonna get that. So runners cannot have a leg raised higher than the fielder's knee. Okay, so you'll jump on that when that happens. Okay, and here's one that we need to clarify a little bit because it's been abused. Except at home plate, runners may not slide through or beyond the base. Okay, so keep in mind. The exception is, well, let me just go to 232-2C. Slide through and legal slides through, then makes contact or alters the play of the fielder. So if you don't just think that a slide through is going to be a violation, because if it doesn't interfere with anything, it's nothing. So it's like turf, artificial turf, when it's wet. I mean, you've seen it happen. Anybody who's done a game at Valley or anybody who's done a game at any field with some artificial turf that gets a little bit wet, these fielders can sometimes slide 20 feet past the bat. But if there's no contact, you're going to be okay with that. So don't just assume that if he slides through, and that's what this slide kind of makes it sound like, that any runner who slides through is out. Well, he's not. So just make sure if he makes contact, if he alters the pattern of the play, then you're definitely going to get some interference on that one. Okay. And they clarified it a little bit more by saying runners may not slide away from a base in the direction of the fielder, but a runner may slide in a direction away from a fielder to avoid making contact or altering the play of the fielder. Okay, so if you're sliding, obviously if you're sliding, toward the player, toward the defensive guy, and it interferes with the pattern of the play, you're going to get interference, and you're not only going to get him out, but you're also going to call out the battle runner going to first too. So you're going to get 2 outs on that one. So, and they just want to make some basic statements here. The runner's out when he illegally slides. On a forced play, the runner's also guilty of interference. Batter runner's also declared out, and all other runners must return to the base occupied at the time of the pitch. So be really familiar with that one, because manager's going to come out and go, hey, why are you putting this guy back at first? Well, here's why. And so that's just what the rule says. And so just be real familiar with that forced play slide rule. So if there are any questions about that, because the next slide deals with the compliant baseballs, but any questions about the forced play slide rule, feel free to write them down, and we will get to them, believe me. All right, so the next thing, compliant baseball. So a couple of years ago, maybe it was last year or the year before, the NFHS introduced this requirement to have the NOXI stamp in addition to the NFHS stamp on all baseballs. And they gave managers, teams, coaches everywhere, they gave them a couple of years head start on this thing. So they all know about it. And it took effect as of Jan 1, just a couple of weeks ago, 2020. Now, in addition to the NFH stamp, it's going to have that meets NOXI standard on that baseball. Okay, so keep in mind, they're just trying to, the whole intent on this was to, have a consistent baseball for, playing high school baseball. I know a couple of managers that have used, higher stitch baseballs to make the ball, do some different things out there. But for 2020, for this year, for this coming baseball season, got to look at that baseball and make sure it's got both those stamps on it. And like I said, if it doesn't have that NOXI stamp on it, don't just kill the game, okay? Keep the game going, but make absolutely sure that you put a report in to the NMOA, okay? Make absolutely sure you do that, because that's the only way they're going to know that some of the baseballs out there are not compliant. And I can't tell you how different the baseball is this year from last year. I don't know, but they have all decided nationally, the national level, that this NOXI standard has to be on that baseball. It's all about consistent play and physics of the baseball and what the baseball does and things like that. I'm not sure if it's softer. I mean, I have no idea. I'm just guessing at this point. But like I said, if the team doesn't have them, don't just kill the game because they don't have a compliant baseball. Play the game, but put the report in. Make absolutely sure you call in that report to the NMOA and make sure the NMOA knows which team it is, and they will, believe me, they will deal with that in a hurry. So, and the next one is it just tells you where the rule is. It's in 1-3-1, and they remind us that as of January 1, that the mark is required. And baseballs shall have the SEI NOXI mark along with the authenticated mark. Yeah. So the rationale here it is to maintain a consistent, uniform standard for high school competition, and to ensure that every baseball manufacturer meets the same level of quality and playability. Because some skippers will add a diamond ball in there, and then they'll slip it in and hope the umpire doesn't notice it. Well, so now we got to have two stamps on it. We got to have the NFHS and we've got to have the NOXI stamp on it.
Here's a question. If runners are not required to slide as per the rule, will we still enforce runners' interference if the runner goes into any base in a force situation, upright directly into the base or towards the fielder?
Tom, did you want to take a shot at that?
Absolutely. The way that was worded, the answer is yes. If he does not slide and he interferes, then he's going to be out for interference. So if I shouldn't say, he would already be out on the force play. This is where you would get the double play on the interference. So yes, if he did not slide, but went towards the fielder making the play, or by virtue of not sliding and going straight in, interfered with the ability of the shortstop to make the throw to first, yes, you would call interference on that.
So just be looking for the interference of the pattern of the play. If there's any move that convinces you that it changed the pattern of the play by the way he came in, then by all means get that interference call, but be ready to explain it.
Okay, so don't look for that and call it. No, yeah, I called it on me. I feel good about myself. Well, so be sure that you can explain that after it happens, because like I said, the runners cannot get in the way of the fielders attempting to make a play, and you're going to get 2 outs on that. Okay, and you can be sure the manager's going to come out. Hey, why are 2 out? Well, you can tell them by rule that is the situation, and you're going to get 2 outs on that.
And then is that a delayed dead ball situation?
No.
It is not a delayed dead ball situation, by the way. That's automatic. That's right there, right here and now. Okay? All right.
Let me add one more thing. It does not have to be intentional. They can, if they are just running straight in and they veer off, and the throw from pulls the fielder into the path of the runner that was veering out of the way. He chose poorly, and he's going to get penalized for it. Intent has nothing to do with it.
John and Eric, did that answer your questions, gentlemen? If not, just type some more.
Yeah, so guys, like I said, if you want to continue with the questions, feel free to just type them in if you would, and then we'll definitely get to them. But I'm hoping that answers your question on that force play slide, and sounds like it did answer your question. So, hey, and by the way, delayed dead ball is something like catcher's interference, for instance. That's going to be something where it's going to be delayed. We won't talk about that because it's not on the points of emphasis. You guys all know that. So, but no, in this situation, this is you're going to get interference right now. And by calling time, that's interference, and then you're going to turn around and also call the runner at first out as well. So 2 outs on that. So if there are no other questions on the force play slide rule, like I said, it's just been abused, nationwide, and they just want everybody to be very familiar with to reread this force play slide rule and become familiar with it, because hey, these rules of baseball are not easy. Believe me. I mean, the rule book contradicts itself, 50 times, along the path, and you all know that by being a baseball umpire. So it's a tough thing to do sometimes, but your use of logic and common sense, goes a hell of a long way, when you're doing a baseball game. Okay, let's move on if there are no other questions. Okay, so did you have something else?
Well, we can get. When you're done with this, we'll get back to the question on the game-ending procedures.
Okay. Hey, so the umpire who had the question about game-ending procedures, we'll handle that in just a few minutes. Let's just go ahead and get through this compliant body and chest protector situation. Okay, so and I believe this is for 2020. Yes, it is. So as of Jan 1, once again, just like the knock seat standard on the baseballs, now the catcher's protective chest protector has to have this stamp as well. Keep that in mind, okay? And there's a reason for that. We have this, and we've talked about this last year, maybe the year before. Remember, we talked about commotio cordis. This is Latin for this lethal disruption of the heart, okay? And it usually happens in boys who are between the ages of 14 and 16. That's how that's just the group of guys who are, some are dying because of this. They get whacked in a particular part of that heart area, and it provides it causes a lethal disruption. It's called commotio cordis. That's the Latin version of it. That's the medical term for it, but it's a killer. Okay, so the ball is whacking you in a certain area right above the heart, and it's stopping the heart. And if you don't initiate CPR, I'm not saying umpires initiate CPR. I'm just saying if CPR is not initiated within about 3 minutes, there's a really good chance, high likelihood, that kid will die, and it's happened. And like I said, it occurs mostly in boys and young men at average age of 15, and it usually happens, especially in baseball, despite the chest protector. So that's why they're going with this, high impact plastic, and then the stamp that has to be on these catchers' chest protectors, just like the baseball. It's going to look identical, but it's going to have a little bit of a different symbol on it, and I'm sure you can see that. It's an EKG symbol or something going across there. So they want you to know that that's a protection of the heart for these 15-year-old boys who seem to be having some serious problems with this, and it's rare. Commotio cordis is rare, but it's happening, and if it happens just once, the NFHS is going to deal with it, and they're going to deal with it strongly. So that's why they last year they said, hey, by the way, for 2020, we're going to make all the catchers wear have this stamp on it, and whether it involves high impact plastic, I do not know. I have a feeling that high impact plastic is probably going to be sewn up under the
the protector itself, I do not know. I have no idea how it's going to work, but that stamp has to be on there, okay? And just a couple of stats I ran is from 1996 to 2007, the United States National Commotion Cordis Registry had 188 cases recorded. 96% of victims were male, age 14.7, okay, years or fewer, and 1 in 5 survived the incident. Okay, so it's heavy duty. So 2 to 3 deaths are happening per year in baseball because of this. And that's why they went with this requiring the stamp and requiring that these chest protectors be a little bit better at, preventing that sharp, blunt blow to the area above the heart. Okay, so, and the highest incidence is baseball's number 1, softball's number 2, hockey's number 3, and football's number 3. So I mean, you can understand in hockey. I mean, when that puck's flying at 80 miles an hour and hits you in the chest, that's an issue. So it also occurs in martial arts as well. When martial arts people, guys are sparring, a heel to the heart has been known to kill some. Okay, but like I said, it only happens. It's really rare, and it happens in this age group from about 14 to 16. So keep that in mind.
Non-compliant chest protectors do not allow them to play without it.
As of 2020, we have to have this NOXI stamp on here. I don't, I could get a clarification from the upper management here at NMOA, but because this is such a huge issue, I mean, and I did say it's rare. It's tremendously rare that a catcher is gonna die from this. But at the same time, if you can prevent 1 death a year, then they're gonna go ahead and do it. So. What I'll do is I'll get a clarification. We'll send that statewide and see. I understand what you're saying, because if he doesn't have it, are we gonna change it out? Or if they don't have one, are we gonna stop the game? Well, my tendency is not to stop a game, especially like we talked about earlier. If one team doesn't have the compliant baseball, go ahead and continue. This is a little different, just because it's a heart protection thing. So. We're going to get a clarification on that, and then we're going to send that all across the state and let you guys know exactly what's going to go on in case you have the situation where a catcher does not have that stamp. But keep in mind, it is required. You can tell that skipper, tell that manager, hey, you've known about this for a year or 2, and this stamp has to be on there, and then go from there. And like I said, before the season starts, we will have clarification for you.
To see if he'll respond to that, and there is a follow-up that says, are we required to check chest protectors prior to the start of the game, and then what happens if a team does not have one at all? Right,
so that's kind of a similar question before, but like I said, this NOXI stamp is going to be white. It's going to be very visual. You can see and I'm not sure, right there it shows it on the left side of the chest protector. I mean, it could be on the right side. I'm not really sure about that. They don't really go into all the details about where the stamp should be. But what I do know is it's going to be white. It's going to be very easily readable. It's going to be visual. It's going to be probably a 2 inch by 2 inch stamp on there. But like I said, we will get you some clarification on that as soon as we possibly can. So that you guys know how to deal with that if a catcher comes out without the, especially the lower levels, where it happens most. 14 to 16 is usually what, mid-school, freshman, maybe some JV, not sure, but anyway, we'll definitely have an answer for you here. Not sure when, but we will definitely work on that. And by the way, Dana just sent a text to Dusty, and so maybe he'll chime in here, and if not, we will get an answer. Okay. All right, so here's where it just explains it. It's in Rule 1-5-3, catcher shall wear. Catcher shall wear, that means he must, in my opinion, in addition to a head protector, a mask with a throat protected body, chest protector that meets the NOXI standard at the time of manufacture. And that's effective Jan 1 of 2020, which was just a couple of weeks ago. Protective cup, they go on to say protective, baseball protective shin guards. The SEI NOXI mark is required on all body chest protectors that meet the NOXI standard at the time of manufacture that will be used in high school competition. time of the manufacture. That's kind of key. It's kind of a legal thing, but like I said, we're going to work on grabbing an answer for you and clarifying you exactly what to do in that situation.
And if we don't get an answer from Dusty tonight, I'll make sure I get something, and I'll get that out to everybody, tomorrow or the next day. So if you don't hear from us about it tonight, just be on the lookout in your email.
Yeah, we're not going to leave you hanging on this one. That's a great question, by the way. It was a similar question about the baseballs too. Although nobody asked that question, I thought about, okay, so what if we have a team that doesn't have the, that NOCSI stamp on the baseball? Well, we're not going to kill the game because we're definitely going to put in a report on that. And this could be the same way on this chess thing. I'm not sure about that. Not sure how Dusty's going to deal with that, but. And then the rationale, and here it is. I mean, we already talked about it before, but you guys can read it. It does mention the commotio cordis situation. It does say the NOCSI standard could be included in a product that is either a separate device, apparel, or a device constructed into a traditional chest protector. This proposal is recommended and endorsed by the Sports Medicine Advisory to minimize risk. Catcher has to wear either a chest protector that meets NOCSI or a body protector that meets NOCSI standard underneath a traditional chest protector. It's the responsibility of the coach to verify that his or her players are properly equipped and in uniform. So we've heard this 4 times. I mean, it's the catcher shall, you must, you have to. I mean, it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for mystery here, as I read it, and I'm sure as you guys read it too. So. But like I said, we'll get an answer for you.
And one more question. The question sure. I always get: does the hockey-style mask need a dangling neck guard? The answer to that is no.
No, it doesn't. That's the NOCSI. The NOCSI symbols also on those the catchers' helmets also. Obviously, we can't turn hats around and throw a mask on our face anymore at the high school level. So no, that is not required to wear the dangling neck throat protector like some umpires use. I don't know how many of you guys use that. I don't use it myself, but I had 30 years and I haven't been hitting the net yet. So I mean, I don't know. I just haven't had that issue. Just because the masks I wear usually have a little bit of an extension built into the mask, and I don't think I require it yet. However, I'm sure anybody in the crowd here who has been whacked in the neck, who has been brought to your knees that way, I'm sure you went ahead and slapped one of those attachments on there. As far as the catchers go in baseball, no, it's not. All right, so a face mask guard specifically designed for a particular helmet model may be attached after manufacture, provided that the procedure is approved by the manufacturer and meets the NOCSI standard at the time of manufacture. I think the key there is time of manufacture. Like I said, we're going to get some clarification on this. Actually, we dealt with this last year, this attachment situation. I don't know if you had any kind of input on that. No. So, but you'll notice that this has been attached with 3 rivets. The photo you see right there. But yeah, so we'll have clarification on that one as well. Okay, so here we are back at the proper pitching positions. This has also been it's obviously a point of emphasis for this year, but proper pitching positions. They want to remind us all across the nation about what the proper pitching positions are in baseball. And we all know what the windup requires. We all know what the set requires. You see the picture there in front of you. That's perfectly legal right there. And we'll move on to the next one. Here's something else. And that's, let's see, that's the set position. Yeah, so for the set position, pitcher stand with his entire non-pivot foot in front line extending through the front edge of the pitcher's plate and with his pivot foot in contact with or directly in front of and parallel to the pitcher's plate. So this is a legal position. Obviously, you've seen it, hundreds of thousands of times. I mean, it's perfectly legal. However, we're going to get into this hybrid thing again for about the 5th year in a row. So because that's been a tough one for umpires to enforce, not enforce, but to recognize. Okay, so and before we talk about that though, here's something else that's legal. Oh yeah, sorry about that. I forgot to change the slide. So because there's holes you know, so, I mean, some of the fields are kind of primitive. They have these gigantic holes in front of the pitcher's plate, and they don't get tended. They don't get, you know, tailored. And so the NFHS a couple of years ago, or maybe it's, let's see. Yeah, so we dealt with this last year too. So this pivot foot can be on the corner of the plate like this. And keep in mind, watch it. I mean, pay close attention to that foot position right there, because that's legal. So they're saying that, hey, it's okay to have a foot on the corner. A lot of umpires were saying, no, you can't have your foot on the corner last year. And so they decided to put it in the points of emphasis, which is in again this year. So this is going to be legal. So don't think this is an illegal pitching position, because it is not. So, and it's all about avoiding the hole in front of some of these pitchers' plates. Okay, so they're allowing the pitcher to avoid the hole and set up this way. Okay. Okay, so here is this hybrid. So this is not consistent with either the windup or the set. And so if you see the feet in this position, and by the way, MLB does this all the time, but this is not MLB, this is high school. So we're not gonna allow these pitchers to do this. This is called the hybrid stance. And you know, it's very difficult to tell whether or not he's in the set or the wind up position. So that's the problem with this position of the feet in this thing called the hybrid position. So it's illegal, so deal with it. At the lower levels, you know, I mean, at the beginning of the season, I would just, you know, call time, get the skipper out, to get the manager out there, and let them know, hey, listen, your pitcher's in a hybrid position. It's not conforming to either the set or the windup. So I don't know if you want to add a little bit more to that, Tom.
You can oftentimes catch this as a base umpire when the pitcher is warming up prior to the start of game. You'll get an idea that you know, he is using that position. I walk in and correct him and tell him what a proper position is. If it gets all the way to like the state tournament and stuff, I'd let him throw the first pitch, call it an illegal pitch, call a ball one on the batter, and then that solves the problem for both teams for the rest of the game. And I speak from experience on that one. But it's something that if you have the presence of mind to look for it prior to a pitch being thrown, you can oftentimes get it corrected before a pitch ever gets thrown.
So the key there is to look at the, and Tom makes a great point on this. You know, look at the pitchers warming up at the beginning of the game. Are they utilizing that hybrid? If so, hey, deal with it right there instead of, calling time in the middle of the game and recognizing it there. Recognize it at the beginning if he's doing it. I mean, sometimes they don't do it at the beginning, and then they'll work on, slowly moving into this hybrid stance. And like I said, the key to the whole thing is it doesn't conform to either the windup or the set. Okay, so keep that in mind. That's the criteria, or that's the reasoning that the hybrid has been disallowed. And like I said, a lot of these pitchers are trying to copy their major league pitching heroes, and they're all standing like this at the moment. And it's legal at MLB, but not at high school.
So I did get an answer from Dusty on the chest protectors. So he just said that players need to be wearing legal equipment, and it is not the umpire's responsibility to check those in pregame. It's just like the legal bats, he said. So it is the coach's responsibility to legally equip their team. So he said, let the coach monitor that unless it's obvious or brought to their attention. If it is, he said, to use your judgment, or you can actually call him when that arises and he can help walk you through it. But he did say that the coaches know they are responsible, just like with the legal bats. And you can always, if there's an issue, you can always write that up to our office if it's not something that is imperative and need to be, addressed in that moment. So that's from Dusty.
Okay, so like I said, just to sum up, it sounds like Dusty's dealing with this as on the coach's side, on the manager's side. It's his responsibility to recognize that all his players are legally equipped out there. And so if you do not see it, it sounds like we're going to go ahead and let the game go on. We're not going to be stopping a game because a catcher does not have this stamp on their protector. But
like I said, in all cases with a first-year rule, we're going to be relatively flexible about this. Sounds like Dusty's being flexible about this. He always has been, so that's good. I'm glad he's using a little common sense on this one, because we certainly don't want to stop a game, because they're not legally equipped. And if you umpires are kind of worried about getting sued in court on this one, I mean, everybody's being sued these days. But like I said, this is the coach's deal here. He or she is responsible for all their players being legally equipped, and this is part of it. Okay, so that's part of the that compliance stamp on the catcher's chest protector is required for 2020. But like I said, let's use a little common sense and logic on this one. If you want to report it to the NMOA, feel free to do that. In fact, I would highly recommend that you do that. Go ahead and submit a report on that we had a catcher that had a non-compliant chest protector. Okay, so feel free to do that. And we expect to get some calls or some texts or some emails from you guys out there, making us aware, making the NMOA aware of the situation. So, are there any other questions about the pitching position, the hybrid stance?
You have one question. Is that only in the stretch position?
Only in
this position is neither the windup nor the stretch position, and that's what makes it in for the stretch position. Pivot foot must be directly in front of and parallel to the pitching plate. For the windup position, the non-pivot foot cannot be entirely in front of a line extending through the front edge of the pitching plate.
So because this doesn't conform to either one, it's illegal. Okay, so there's no way they can get away with this. This is an illegal pitching position right here.
That's illegal.
And like we said, try to deal with this at the beginning. Try to nip this in the bud right at the beginning of the game, and see if this pitcher is using the hybrid. Because like I said, these freshmen, the mid-school freshmen, the JV players, all want to imitate their MLB heroes. So they, and they're all, most of these pitchers are standing that way. I mean, my man Roger Clemens, from the Red Sox back in the 90s. That's his classic pitching position. And so, but like I said, this does not conform to either one, so therefore it's illegal because it doesn't conform to either one. So, and that's what you can explain to the manager and explain to the pitcher. The pitcher's probably not going to understand understand your intent on that. So you might have to get the manager out, especially at the lower levels when they try this. So let's stop this from the beginning and see if we can, provide some solution right at the beginning of the game before they start doing it over and over again, before you have to start calling time and, calling an illegal pitch or whatever the case may be. So.
And then there's a follow-up. Is a main key that his pivot foot is not parallel to the pitching plate?
The answer to that is no. Well, if he's trying to be in a stretch position, yes, his pivot foot is not parallel to the pitching plate. For the windup position, his non-pivot foot is entirely in front of a line extending through the front edge of the pitching plate. So it like Jay has said, it does not conform to either one. The closest, based on the diagram that you're looking at here, the closest position would be if he put his pivot foot directly in front of and parallel to the pitching plate, he would be in a legal set position.
And usually, like I said, because it doesn't conform to either one, it's a deceiving situation for the runner. I mean, runner, leading off first base, thinking he's got to come to a set, he's got to come to a stop. We don't know which position he's in. Therefore, it's going to be very difficult for that base runner to determine exactly what's going on out there. And it's going to be, and obviously we want to be prepared as umpires to, to stop that and realize why it's illegal, because the manager is going to come out. Why? Well, because it doesn't conform to either the set or the windup, period. I mean, that's all you really have to tell them, and let them know it's deceptive also. So that's another key word that you want to use when you're trying to, make a corrective action on this thing. So, all right, if there are no more questions, we'll go on to believe it or not, it's the last slide. So here we go. So they want the jewelry rule enforced. Again, I mean, this has been probably a point of emphasis for, I don't know, 3-4 years. A lot of abuse in it last year and the year before. Keep in mind that jewelry, including necklaces, bracelets, earrings, cannot be worn except for religious or medical medals. Okay, so a religious medal must be taped down and worn under the uniform, and a medical alert must be taped and obviously has to be visible because, you know, if this guy goes down and he's got an issue and he's got a medical alert bracelet, the responding EMTs need to know that, so it can be taped, and it's got to be visible, obviously, for the medical technician, but it's got to be taped. Okay, and that's so fingers don't get caught up in it. I mean, that's what the whole jewelry rule is all about, especially with the necklaces. Once again, these guys are, you know, trying to imitate their MLB guys. So, and you know, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars of necklaces being used at the MLB level right now, and these guys are just trying to copy that. They want to fling themselves out. They want to wear these gold necklaces. It can't happen. It's just not going to happen. So, just make sure at the beginning of the game that you let the coaches, that both managers know, or the representatives, that hey. And then don't warn them, right? Just say, listen, be aware, it's a point of emphasis this year that jewelry has got to be, worn in a compliant fashion, especially with the religious and the medical alert bracelets. So just let them know at the beginning of the game. And like I said, guys, do not warn them at the beginning. This is ridiculous. That's going to set a horrible tone for the rest of the game. Just let them know, hey, listen, there's a point of emphasis for 2020. And because there's been a lot of abuse with wearing of necklaces and injuries to fingers, hands, eyes, neck, you name it, it's been injured. So, and that's why they put the point of emphasis in there. So, are there any questions about the jewelry situation or bracelets or earrings or anything like that? I don't believe we have any questions or any other questions. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Okay, the question about game-ending procedures. Rule 422, goes on about by state association adoption, the game shall end, and we refer to this as the 10-run rule. Basically, if the home team is leading by 10 runs or more after 4.5 innings, or if either team is leading after an equal number of at-bats by 10 runs or more prior to the 7th inning, but it's got to go at least 4.5 innings if the visiting team is the one that is trailing, or 5 innings if it's the home team. And the New Mexico Activities Association for the state of New Mexico has adopted this game-ending procedure. So that's the game-ending procedure for baseball here. Again, we just refer to that often as the 10-run rule. The only other thing I wanted to cover, I wanted to read one of the scenarios.
So a follow-up to that, the individual who's asking is actually coming to us from Texas.
Okay.
He just wanted to know what the New Mexico rules were, and he said, so no 15 after 3?
That's correct.
No, we
just
can't.
10 runs after 5.
Yeah, I can't do that. And that's been happening. That's why they put the point of emphasis in here. We just want to remind you that if you're in New Mexico, we do have this 10-run rule, in place as a game-ending procedure. But if it wasn't there, now by mutual agreement by both managers, you can come up with something that would be, beneficial to both or agreeable to both, and then you can go with that. I don't know, in Texas, I'm going to ask a question of you. In Texas, is there the 15-run rule? If you could just answer that real quick and just give me a yes or no. Does the 15 after 5 apply in Texas high school? So, while we're waiting on your response, we'll move on.
And he did say, so we're playing 5 no matter what?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're going to play 5 innings, okay? And we do have the 10-run rule. So so keep that in mind. In New Mexico, it's probably a little bit different than Texas. Like I said, is there a 15 after 3?
He said it was, for Texas, it was a 15 after 3 and a 10 after 4.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Texas, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, New Mexico hasn't gone to that, so we'll just keep in mind that Texas rules are a little bit different, and it's statewide differences. I mean, we're in New Mexico, so we're going to go with the 10-run rule for your future umpiring here in the state of New Mexico.
Thanks for asking the question. Let That's a good question coming in from out of state.
No doubt.
Okay, we're going to jump back to the DH rule. The new DH on this scenario, when a player / DH has a substitute in the defensive role and later returns in the defensive role, does that count as the player DH's re-entry for the purposes of re-entry rights? And the answer to that is yes. So if the player DH has another player assume the defensive role, the player DH can re-enter on defense in the defensive role only once. Doing so effectively counts as the re-entry. In that case, if the starter is substituted for later, that starter cannot then re-enter. Say, for example, Davis starts as the first baseman and the DH in the number 4 spot in the lineup. In the second inning, Jackson takes over on defense. Davis continues as the DH. In the third inning, Davis re-enters at first base. Jackson, as a substitute, does not have re-entry rights and is done for the game. Another substitute can come in and take over in the defensive role and shift Davis back to the DH role. If that substitute or another substitute pinch hits or pinch runs, the DH is terminated, but Davis, who has already re-entered the game, is now done for the game and cannot come back in any capacity. Okay, that was kind of a long-winded one, but I thought that was a good example of how someone can be substituted for on defense, remain in the game as the DH, re-enter the game, come back out again, and wind up not because once you're substituted for on offense, you're done for the day if you don't have re-entry rights.
So if that generates a question, feel free to put it down there if you're a little bit confused on that one. I got another one here too. This is the starting pitcher is listed as the PDH on the lineup card. His team gets a 12-run lead after 1 inning. The head coach can replace the pitcher and put the starting pitcher into play left field. The answer is no. The new rule prohibits the starting pitcher listed as the PDH from playing any other position in the field once removed from the pitcher's spot. So I just thought that was a really good question that I found that kind of clarified me a little bit. And another one is somebody asked, a coach must list the starting pitcher as a PDH. Well, no, that's not true. It's a coach's option to list the starting pitcher as the PDH. You can list anybody as the PDH, not just the pitcher. But I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of pitchers being identified as the PDH because they're typically pretty good hitters. And if they reach a pitch count that prohibits them from pitching anymore, let's say they go out in the 4th inning, they can still hit. So keep that in mind. I thought that was a pretty applicable question for me. I had some questions about that, and that's how that went. So if there are no other questions, hey guys, I hope you're relatively clear on this new PDH. It's going to be kind of challenging, but I mean, if you just realize that, I mean, there's 3 different lineups they can submit. It's going to be the straight 9, the traditional DH, and then this new PDH. And like I said, it's all about creating offense. It's all about if you have a pitcher as the PDH, he can stop pitching and still hit. So that's what they like about it. So it gives more of the players a little opportunity to stay in the game a little bit longer, and that's really the intent of the whole thing. So if you keep that intent in mind, I think we can make some logical decisions on the questions they may have. And believe me, they're going to have them. You're going to have them. Don't be intimidated by this. I mean, it's all you have to do is read it, be familiar with it, test yourself a little bit. And like Tom said, there's probably going to be at least 4 or 5 questions on the NFHS test that deal with the PDH.
So there's a question. Where is the cheat sheet that was mentioned?
So the cheat sheet came in Referee Magazine, and I don't know what month it came in. It was downloaded to me by our president. No, it wasn't our president. It was our assigner who actually got a hold of this thing, and it's nice because it asks a whole bunch of questions that a manager might ask, And I think it covers almost anything you could ever want to know about this. But anyway, it came in Referee Magazine. I'm not sure what month, but if you type in probably refereemagazine.com or referee.com, you will be able to see that. I understand they're charging for it. What were you saying? It's like $5?
At least one document was $4.95 or something like that. If you send me an email, I will forward you a copy of that. And my email is twlitchfield@msn.com. If you're not local, if you are, pull it off the arbiter, send me an email, and if you're from here in Albuquerque, we will get you that'll be part of our group meetings that we will provide this to everybody. If you're not from Albuquerque and you want a copy of it, send me an email and I will get you a copy of it.
So I did just type in the chat area Tom's email address. So if you want to email him, he can send that over to you.
So I'm hoping all you guys can see that. You can see Tom Litchfield's email on that. He will make sure that you get a copy of that cheat sheet. Tom showed me his cheat sheet. It's like it's like a 2x2. I mean, I'm not 2-inch. I'm talking a 2 foot by 2 foot situation because he struggles seeing, and so his print is a little bit bigger, and so that's cool. But hey, but the cheat sheet's really nice because it could be laminated, it could be folded in half, it can easily go in your top pocket, back pocket, whatever, and then you can refer to that, especially in this first year where this rule's new. Don't feel bad about whipping out a cheat sheet or a document of any kind to clear you up on that, because you just and feel free to take a minute or 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, hey, it's new, it's a new rule. Take your time with this. Be able to explain it, and the cheat sheet should do the trick for you, because there's not a single question on here that I mean all of them are very very applicable. It has every single scenario about this PDH that you could ever imagine. So this is going to be a really good cheat sheet to carry with you to help you explain to a variety of managers who are going to be a little confused about this. And keep in mind, there's going to be the ones out there who are going to exploit this, okay, in a huge way. You know who they are. They're going to try it. There's a handful of guys out there who are going to be very familiar with this and who are going to try to exploit it. So don't let it happen, or try not to let it happen. And like I said, this cheat sheet is something that is really going to go far for you. And so it's going to help you guys out a lot. So once again, Tom is willing to get you guys forwarded this sheet. It's in color. It's in blue and red and some other colors, but it's designed to fit in your top pocket, back pocket, front pocket, whatever, so you can refer to it in case you have to. So that's where that is, and Tom will make sure you get that. So request it, and he will get it to you. Okay.
So everyone, just a couple of things before we conclude. I think we're done with the slides and it's question time, but just a couple of things from our office's standpoint. So with the state clinic being canceled, one of the things that we're going to do for individuals who are signed up for it is we'll be sending, we're going to have the clinicians that were set up record the presentations that they were going to do at the clinic. We're going to have them do some recorded presentations, and we'll send those out so that way you're still getting the materials that were to be presented had we not canceled. One of the things I'll be working with our group leaders and assigners on is setting up some on-field regional type mechanics trainings, both 2 and 3 persons. So what we've had a lot of discussions about is we've shifted so much of our focus to 3-person that some people are lacking in those fundamentals on 2 persons. So we want to get back to some of the basics on that for individuals who aren't quite ready to make the leap to 3, since you're not using 3-person until like the first round of state in most cases. We need to start looking at the 2-person. So we're trying to do those sorts of things throughout the season to supplement having to cancel the clinic. One of the things that I'll be doing from my desk is sending a survey out to both our baseball and softball umpires population to try and see what, when we need to have this state clinic. So the reason that baseball and softball had been moved out of the summer was kind of twofold. One was to give some individual attention to our spring sports, And the second was because the National Federation does not yet have rules changes out for the next year for spring sports in July. So we wanted to move it so it was a little more relevant and closer to the start of the season. But as this was going to be the third year of the state clinic for baseball and softball, our numbers had just declined so drastically that financially it wasn't feasible to host the clinic last weekend. Then when I saw it was 19 degrees at the time of our on-field training, I felt a little less guilty about not having it. So we need to find whatever that sweet spot is for baseball and softball. We've had some conversation about doing baseball in conjunction with a pretty large USSSA tournament in September. For football, volleyball, soccer officials, that would lead to some conflicts, but the weather would be nicer. We've talked about doing something in conjunction with the New Mexico High School Baseball Coaches Association, and they are really interested in that. So they have an annual state clinic that they would like to partner with us. So we're going to throw some ideas to you in a survey and certainly be open to ideas back from our umpires, because we want to continue training and education of our baseball and softball umpires, but we need to know when is going to be a time to pique more interest. So be on the lookout for those things, and certainly if you think of anything in the interim, please let me know. There is a question. On the game continuation point, is the 10 runs after only 5 for varsity games in New Mexico? If so, what rules the JV and or freshman games?
Same rules.
The same rules all across the board. Mid-school, there's a couple of little, no, it's actually, it's all the same. Mid-school is going to be the same all the way through varsity. It's all going to be the game-ending situations that are identified in the rule book. Okay, so that's a 10-run rule. So that's applicable all the way down to mid-school games. And I'm not sure in Texas if you guys have mid-school games under your jurisdiction. We do, but most of them are in Rio Rancho. Not sure there's a whole lot of mid-school in in the Albuquerque area, but certainly in Rio Rancho there's a whole lot of mid-school games going on. And so so that's that 10-run rule is all the way across the board on that. So
and another question, sorry. Going back to forced play, does sliding runner into second with leg too high have to make contact with the fielder for interference and double play to be called? Assuming the runner does not affect play in any other way, similar to calling nothing if sliding beyond base but not making contact.
I would, because the slide with the foot above the knee is an illegal slide, regardless of whether there's interference or not, and it is dangerous, I would say, yes, you rule it on the illegal slide and you get the double play.
So keep in mind, it says specifically runners may not have a leg raised higher than the fielder's knee. It doesn't say anything about contact. I mean, that's what it's about. It's about, making that cleat contact, that sharp metal contact against that skin above the knee and then tearing that thigh open. So once again, runners may not have a leg raised higher than the knee. It doesn't say and make contact. So you can get that. It's just a leg raised higher than the fielder's knee is all we're looking for on that, okay? And you can explain it to the skipper by saying, hey, listen, we can't have a slide with the cleats higher than the knee. It's dangerous. It could tear up, somebody's thighs, make somebody bloody. It could, create stitches somewhere. I mean, even if they made no contact, they could have. So that's how they're going to deal with that. Yeah, I would agree with Tom on that. Interpretation is that if that leg's raised higher than the knee, go ahead and get it. Okay.
Rulebook seems to say it must be illegal slide and contact to be made 8-4-2B.
Okay, so Tom's going to look that up. Okay, good point. We'll check that out. And so, what was the reference again?
8-4-2B.
Yeah, he's asking specifically about the interference call, correct?
Okay. Oh, you mean the mechanics of the call, or do we get that based on the contact of the cleats? Because I mean, usually, you know, in a two-man crew, we're, you know, I don't know, 15 feet from that. Are we going to be able to see that? I'm not sure, but Tom's reading it right now, so we'll go ahead and deal with that in a few minutes. But and guys, I would also say that let's try to talk people into umpiring baseball, shall we? I mean, we got basketball down, we got football down, we got baseball down. I mean, everybody's down. Nobody wants to officiate sports anymore. Please try to talk to your buddies, your aunts, your uncles, your sisters, brothers. I mean, you know, what's the minimum age to umpire?
15 for sub-varsity.
So for sub-varsity, you have to be, you know, 15 years old. You know, so obviously a 15-year-old is, you know, probably going to suffer a little bit with the credibility issue. But I mean, hey, I'm just trying to say, let's talk as many people into doing this as we possibly can. We're kind of a small group. Our numbers are down again for the you know, for the probably the 5th or 6th year in a row. We don't know exactly how many umpires are in the central region right now. Last year we had maybe 50, 55 umpires doing, you know, 900 games. And so it was tough. I mean, we had to rely on some of our retired guys who don't work to do 40 games each. And so that's the only way we got through it last year, by relying on retired guys who can you know, work 5 days a week. So, you know, just talk as many people, you know, into this as you possibly can. And let's try to get some folks, you know, umpiring baseball.
Okay, on the way this is worded, it says does not legally slide and cause illegal contact or illegally alters the actions of the fielder in the immediate act of making a play, or on a forced play. Then it goes into the does not slide in a direct line, and then it has a runner may slide in a direction away from the fielder. Runners are never required to slide. If they slide, it must be legal. And because it is an illegal slide, that's where we're going to get the penalty and rule this a double play, even if that illegal slide does not make contact or alter the play.
So does that make sense to most of you guys out there, especially the guy that asked the question? Does that answer your question? Did we interpret that properly? I mean, you know, we're not total experts over here, but I mean, we've certainly seen a hell of a lot of, you know, interference calls out there and made a few hundred of them too. So that makes sense to me.
Todd, did that answer your question? If you can either unmute yourself and answer or just type it in. He said, okay, seems reasonable.
Seems reasonable, okay.
And then Jeff Varela said slide must be a legal slide.
It must be a legal slide.
So Jeff, yes.
Jeff, are you good with that? Everything all right with that? Okay, sounds good.
Got it.
All right. So I really can't think of anything else. I think we're done. You know, like I said, we were all fired up for last weekend, but there was a variety of reasons. It was multifaceted why we, you know, couldn't pull it off. I think there was a little bit of a lack of interest, but the weather was also kind of a key factor in the whole thing too. And that's why Dana was asking if you guys have any suggestions on, you know, when to do a state baseball clinic. I mean, for 2 years in a row, we've had great weather. I mean, the first year we did this, it was like 55 degrees and sunny out there at El Dorado. So, I mean, it worked out really well. People got sunburned.
So last year it snowed.
Oh, that's right.
The fields were unplayable.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. The El Dorado head skipper said we couldn't use the field because we tear it up, apparently. So that's right. So we've only had 1 of 3 years with cooperative weather. So if you guys have any suggestions on that, feel free to, you know, email, you know, Dana or Dusty or anybody at NMOA and, you know, with your suggestions on, you know, when to do this, you know, at a better time. Maybe in the fall. I don't know. Their intent, NMA's intent was good. I mean, they wanted it a little bit closer to where our season started, so the information is fresh in your head. And you know, we never used to do any kind of on-field mechanics until 2016 or so, and so it worked out really well. But like I said, January weather can be iffy. I mean, it could be 70 degrees one day and snowing the next. So like I said, if you have some any kind of suggestion on a better time to do that, feel free to chime in and, you know, let us know, because we're certainly open-minded to suggestions. So,
does anyone have any other questions, comments, concerns before we log out and dismiss everyone and let you enjoy the rest of your night? We got a thanks to all. It was enlightening and informative. We got one that says boo 49ers.
Oh, damn. All right.
Oh, hey,
What's going on with that?
wait a minute.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Uh-oh,
I've only been a 49ers fan for about 40 years. So.
Uh-huh.
I think a chord has been struck here. I'm
Yeah,
a
it
Dallas fan, so I'm not offended.
And I would highly recommend you don't mention my Patriots. All right? Do not mention my Patriots, anybody. Okay? Just don't do it. Just telling you. My Red Sox are in trouble now, too, because of Alex Cora. So that's another story. We could talk about that for an hour, but he just got dismissed tonight with the sign stealing from last year, 2017, whatever. Anyway, so.
Go Pats.
Go Pats. Nice. Yeah, I like it. I like it.
And then, or the Red Sox.
Or the Red Sox. Thank you. I appreciate it. I needed to hear that. I really did. So.
We're just all talking smack now. I can't say anything because I'm a Dallas fan, but whatever.
Yeah, what, Dallas win about 3 games this year? I mean, come on. It's just kind of ridiculous.
7.
Oh, they won 7. Okay, so sorry.
That was 4 more than I thought they were going to win.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
I'm a realist.
Anybody want to pop off about my Red Sox at all? I mean, anything positive, negative, anything? Adam Perez, how about you? Hey, Adam, come on. You want to pop off? I know you do. There he is. I wanted to see your teeth. That's all I wanted to see, Adam. Thank you. All right. Hey, guys, I think we're done.
He said, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for your participation, and thank you to Jay and Tom for being the clinicians. And thanks to Tom and Jay for commitment and mentoring. So see, even though they don't like your football teams, they think you guys are good mentors.
Right, exactly. That's good. That's good.
And I know, Dwayne, you want to hang on here. I won't log you out. Looks like everybody's logging off. So feel free to sign out. Dwayne, I know had a question to ask these gentlemen. So Dwayne, if you can figure out how to unmute yourself, go ahead and do that.
I'm already done, yeah.
And you could just talk to them.
All right.
A good night, everybody. Have a great season, and thanks for being baseball umpires. You are needed for sure. So thank you for everything, and we look forward to working with you this season. All right, Dwayne, if you're on, feel free to.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, the
Okay.
floor is yours.
You can hear me then? Good. I understand that the basic 9 and the pitcher DH and all that stuff. I just want a little more feedback on the player DH. I keep hearing about the DH playing defense and batting for a player. So is there only 8 batters? That's what's confusing me.
No, the DH is effectively DHing for himself. There will be 9 names on the lineup card.
Okay.
One of them will be identified as, go to slide 2. One of them will be identified with a position / BH. So let's say he's, for the purposes of this argument, he's the pitcher and the DH. So he would maybe be 1 / DH, and that would be one of the 9 batters in the batting order.
Okay.
And so all 9 defensive positions would be listed on the batting order.
Okay.
One of them, in addition to having a defensive position listed, would also have the tag DH.
Okay. Explain to me what's the difference between just having a straight 9 then?
The straight 9, if the person is replaced on defense, they're also replaced on offense.
Right. Okay. So,
In the player / DH situation,
okay.
the defensive replacement can be independent of the designated hitter.
So the DH can remain in the game and a defensive player takes his spot on defense.
That's exactly correct. That's exactly correct.
That
Now,
makes-
the only position that DH could go back and play defensively is the position that he started defensively.
Gotcha. So the DH can return back to playing defense,
One time.
but if someone bats for him, then the DH is done.
That's correct.
Gotcha. So it's a one position thing. You can't just move everybody around and stuff.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, we have our mandatory district clinic in Clovis tomorrow night, and I just wanted to be on top of it so we understood it when we discussed it there. So,
and if you did not get a copy of this, send me an email and I'll send you this thing from Referee Magazine, because it has a lot of good examples in there of how the person can start on defense and be the DH, and then, but because they're the DH, even though they may have been the pitcher, you can't have a courtesy runner for them. Any substitute on offense of any type for this DH terminates the DH for the duration of the game.
Okay, look for an email from Isaac Bailey. He's in our group, and he already emailed you.
Isaac, I already responded, and he's got copies of both of them. So I figured out how to send attachments from my phone. So Isaac should have a copy of those, and he can distribute freely to everybody. This little cheat sheet is a card-sized thing that you could fold in half and stick in your pocket and conveniently carry on the field.
Okay, so basic 9, DH with starting the game with a DH, and then starting the DH with, they mark it as a DH himself. Later on in the game, they can put a defensive player in for him, and he remains.
Right. Just make sure that the DH has to be identified on the lineup card before the game starts, whether he's the traditional DH or this new player DH. It's just that this new player DH could also be a DH, but he could start on defense also.
Okay, so there's a straight 9, a DH with 10 players, or a DH with 9 players designated before the game.
That's correct.
Perfect. That makes it a lot easier to understand.
It does. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because we're trying to do our best to keep this as simple as possible, and without confusing the issue. But I'm glad. Are you cleared up somewhat, or cleared up a lot?
That cleared. That's what I couldn't get past. That one I didn't understand. Is there going to be 9 players but only 8 batting? How is it? But I understand it's that one slot. It stays the same. So completely understand it now.
Oh, nice. Okay, that's cool. So hey, make sure you share that with your people over there. And where are you from, Dwayne?
We're down in Clovis.
Oh, Clovis. Yeah, right. Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. So just make sure you share that. We're going to hammer it home also, for the first, at least 30 days of the season.
I'm a signer for the Southeast region, so I'm going to hit all the groups, but we just start tomorrow. That's why I wanted to make sure. Nice. And then your man, would you say his name was Bailey? Isaac.
Yeah, Isaac's already received something from Tom, so I think we're good to go there. So he'll have the cheat sheet for you. And that'll clear it up even more. You look at this cheat sheet; it's really quite nice. I mean, I can't wait to laminate mine and put it in my pocket. So, because I'm not totally familiar with this either. I mean, I have a basic understanding, but the coaches are not. So you got to be able to explain it. So,
and Wayne, I'm going to volunteer, Tom and Jay, if you run across stuff in the district clinics where you're presenting and maybe you're unclear about something, feel free to reach out to these guys and they can help you through those. So we're trying to keep with consistent messages and all of that with our presentations. So if something arises where you're just not sure, feel free to reach out to them or shoot me a text or an email and I can get it to them as well. So that way we can make sure we're giving out the same answer all across the state.
Sure.
Okay. I've got Tom's email now because you guys posted it, but if you want to give Jay my email, Dana, that way he has it, and then he can forward, email me so I have his. That'll probably be the easiest way.
Why don't I give it to you right now? Do you have something to write with?
No, give me a second.
All right.
Give me a second. Go ahead.
Okay, so my real name is Solon. It's Solon.
Okay.
Last name's Cousins. Cousins, like aunts, uncles, nephews. So it's going to look like Solon Cousins at Comcast.net.
No underscore or anything like that?
No, I don't believe in underscores. I just don't. I just think they're horrible.
capital S or small?
No, just no, same, it's all lowercase.
Okay, you want, okay.
So
Comcast,
it's, one more time, Dwayne?
SolanCousins@comcast.net.
Did you say Solon?
Solon, SOLON?
Right.
Yeah, cousins@comcast.net.
That's the one right there.
Great.
Any question you have, you bring it my way, and I'll do my best to answer it for you. Okay.
Very good.
All right.
Appreciate you, sir.
Hey, not a problem, Dwayne. Have a great season. Okay.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
All right.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good. See you,
Thanks,
Dwayne.
everybody who's still on. Sorry.
Mike Brightly fired off the text. Thank you, Nuts.
Oh, yeah? That's good. That's excellent.
He was asking something about